Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I would love to know which city you are joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. 6 months ago, I was Nadine Hayes. I was a real estate agent with a decent list of clients and a husband I adored, Vance. We had a lovely 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with big oak trees and neighbors who waved when you drove by. Life was comfortable, predictable, and I loved it that way. I had just gotten a promotion at the brokerage, which meant a higher salary, and Vance and I had spent the weekend talking about our future. We even talked about setting up a college fund for the children we hoped to have. It all felt so perfect. That morning was crisp, the way an early autumn day can be. I was at the kitchen counter sipping my coffee. I remember it was a dark roast, the kind that fills the whole house with a rich, bitter smell. Vance came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You are still going on your hike, right?" he asked. His voice was unusually bright. "Of course," I said. "It is the perfect day for it. Clear skies. You should take the Carson Ridge Trail," he suggested, pouring himself a cup. "I heard the view is spectacular after the rain we had yesterday." I remember thinking it was a little strange. Vance was not usually that interested in my hiking routes. He usually just told me to be safe and went back to watching television. But I just smiled. It sounded like a good idea. An hour later, I was there. The air was clean and smelled of pine and damp earth. I felt a sense of peace as I started up the trail. But as I got higher, I noticed the path was slicker than I had expected. The rain had turned patches of the trail into slick reddish mud. I made a mental note to be careful. I reached a scenic overlook, a place where the trail narrowed near a steep drop-off. I stopped to take a breath, looking out at the valley below. That is the last peaceful moment I remember. I turned to continue on the path, and my foot just went. It did not feel like a simple slip. It felt like the ground beneath me gave way, like I was suddenly unbalanced. There was a split second of pure, dizzying confusion. A sense of weightlessness, and then terror. The world became a blur of green and brown as I tumbled over the edge. I do not remember much of the fall itself, just flashes. The sickening crack of a branch breaking my fall for a moment. The sharp searing pain in my shoulder. The horrifying feeling of hitting the cold, rushing water of the creek below. The impact knocked the wind out of me. And the last thing I remember is the icy water closing over my head, pulling me into the darkness. I do not know how long I was in that water or how long I lay unconscious on the rocky bank where the current finally spit me out. Days, maybe. The next thing I knew, I was waking up to the smell of wood smoke and beef stew. My head was pounding with a deep, throbbing ache that made it impossible to think straight. My entire body felt like one giant bruise. A woman's face came into focus above me. She had kind eyes etched with wrinkles and a gentle smile. "Well, look who has finally decided to join the living," she said. Her voice was warm and raspy. "Easy now. Do not try to move too fast." "Where am I?" I managed to whisper. My throat felt completely raw. "You are in my home. My name is Muriel. My husband found you down by the creek a few days back. You were in a real bad way." She gently dabbed my forehead with a cool, damp cloth. "Honey, you are lucky to be alive. The creek must have carried you for miles." I was alive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I was strong enough to sit up for more than an hour at a time. My head was clearer. One afternoon, Muriel was dusting an old beige desktop computer in the corner of the living room. "You know, we do not have much in the way of internet out here," she said. "But it works. Slow, but it works. Maybe you could try to find your family." My heart started pounding. Of course, the internet. I felt a surge of hope mixed with a strange kind of dread. What would I find? Would Vance be out of his mind with worry? Would my mother be inconsolable? I sat down at the old desk. The plastic of the keyboard was yellowed with age. I could hear the loud whirring and beeping as the machine connected to the internet. My hands were shaking as I typed my own name into the search bar. Nadine Hayes. The first result was a local news article. The headline hit me like a physical blow. Local realtor Nadine Hayes missing. Presumed dead after hiking accident. Presumed dead. The words swam before my eyes. I read the article. My breath caught in my throat. It quoted a devastated Vance who spoke of his unbearable grief. It mentioned a memorial service was being planned. A funeral. They had held a funeral for me. I felt a wave of dizziness, but I kept scrolling. There were pictures of me, articles about the search efforts that had eventually been called off. And then I saw it. An article from a local society blog posted just a few weeks ago. The headline was sickeningly cheerful. A new beginning. Vance Hayes finds love after tragedy. My blood ran cold. I clicked the link and there it was. A picture of Vance, my husband, smiling. His arm was wrapped around my sister, Blythe. She was beaming, her hand held up to show off a glittering diamond ring on her finger. The article was short and sweet. It talked about how they had found solace in each other's arms during their shared grief. It announced their engagement just 3 months after my disappearance. 3 months. I did not realize I was still holding the ceramic mug of tea Muriel had given me until it slipped from my numb fingers. It hit the wooden floor and shattered. The sound echoed the complete and utter destruction of my world. Muriel rushed in. Nadine. Honey, what is it? I could not speak. I just pointed a trembling finger at the screen. She leaned over my shoulder, her eyes scanning the article. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Oh my lord, she whispered. That is just not right. Not right. It was a monstrous betrayal. If he wanted out of our marriage, why did he not just ask for a divorce? Why play the grieving widower only to jump into bed with my own sister? As Muriel helped me clean up the broken pieces of the mug, a single, cold, clear thought formed in my mind. It was no longer about getting back home. It was about something else entirely. I looked up from the floor, my eyes hard. Muriel, I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but filled with a new, terrifying certainty. I am going to crash a wedding. A few days later, I convinced Muriel's grandson, a quiet teenager with a beat-up truck, to drive me into town. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I gave him the last of the cash I had on me. We parked across the street from my house. Our house. It looked exactly the same, but it felt like a stranger's home. We did not have to wait long. The front door opened and Vance and Blythe walked out hand in hand. They were laughing about something. He leaned down and kissed her. It was a casual, intimate gesture that spoke of years of familiarity. It was not the kiss of two people finding comfort in grief. It was the kiss of a long-established couple. The sight of it turned my stomach. I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. I knew then that I could not just storm in. I needed a plan. I needed allies. And I knew exactly who to call first. I had the grandson drop me off at a convenience store where I bought a cheap, disposable phone. My hands trembled as I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, she picked up. Hello, Jolene answered. Do not hang up. It is Nadine. Silence. Then a sharp, annoyed voice. This is not funny. Who is this? I had to prove it was me. When we were 16, I said, my voice cracking. You helped me sneak out to see that awful punk band, the Misfits. You wore my denim jacket because your parents would have grounded you for life if they knew where you really were. We told them we were at a school movie night. More silence. And then a choked sob. Oh my God. Nadine. How? Where are you? I cannot tell you yet, Jolene. But I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me. I took a deep breath. How long? How long were they together before I disappeared? Jolene's sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line told me everything. Nadine, I do not know for sure. There were rumors, whispers, but I never wanted to believe them. How long, Jolene? I insisted. My free hand clenched into a fist. She sighed, a sound heavy with guilt. I saw them together at the Blue Room downtown. It was about 8 months before your accident. My heart stopped. 8 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip, my husband and my sister were sneaking around. They did not see me, Jolene continued, her voice rushed. I wanted to tell you, Nadine. I swear I did. But I had no proof. I confronted Blythe about it later, and she just laughed it off. She swore it was a one-time thing, a stupid mistake, and she begged me not to ruin your marriage over it. 8 months. The words echoed in my head. While I was trying to get our finances in order, while we were talking about that college fund, they were together. The betrayal was so much deeper than I could have ever imagined. Nadine, what are you going to do? Jolene asked. Her voice was laced with fear. Through the windshield of the truck, I watched as Blythe drove away from my house. She was driving my car, the one Vance had probably reported as sold. And she was wearing my favorite cashmere sweater, the one I thought I had lost. A cold, hard resolve settled over me. I am going to let them have their perfect wedding planning, I said. My voice was completely devoid of emotion. Let them send out the invitations, pick the flowers, choose the cake. Let them think they have gotten away with everything. And then? Jolene whispered. And then, I said, I am going to show up at that church and I am going to give them exactly what they deserve. I hung up before she could say another word. This was not just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Returning to Muriel's cabin felt different this time. It was no longer just a sanctuary. It had become my war room. I spent my nights at her kitchen table, making lists, trying to remember passwords, account numbers, anything I could use. Muriel would set a fresh cup of tea beside me, her eyes filled with concern. Be careful, dear, she warned one night. Revenge can consume you if you let it. I looked up from my notes, meeting her gaze. I am not letting it consume me, Muriel, I told her. I am letting it fuel me. There is a difference. And there was. Because to get the justice I needed, I required more information. Jolene's confession was a start, but I needed to know more about what had happened after I was gone. I needed to talk to someone on the inside. I needed to talk to Harlan. Harlan had been Vance's best friend since college, his best man at our wedding. He was a decent guy, but weak-willed, and I always sensed he had a bit of a guilty conscience. More importantly, he always had a soft spot for me. I knew I could use that. I had to change my appearance. Muriel helped me dye my hair a dark brown in her kitchen sink. The cheap box dye stained her white porcelain. I bought a pair of non-prescription glasses with thick frames at a drugstore. I started dressing in baggy, forgettable clothes. It was a strange feeling, trying to become invisible in a town where I once knew everyone. I found Harlan at his usual spot, the corner booth at Jimmy's Bar and Grill, nursing a beer after work. The bar smelled of old fried food and stale beer. My heart was hammering against my ribs as I slid into the booth across from him. Hello, Harlan. His beer froze halfway to his mouth. The color drained from his face as if he had seen a ghost, which I suppose he had. Oh my God, he whispered, his eyes wide with absolute disbelief. Nadine. Keep your voice down, I said, glancing around the bar. I need to talk to you. But you are, they said you were dead. Yes, not so much, I said, leaning forward. Tell me everything, Harlan. How long did you know? He set his beer down with a shaking hand. He would not meet my eyes. I swear, Nadine. I did not know before. Before the accident. Not for sure. But you knew after, I pressed. When they got together so quickly. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. Look, Vance told me there had been something going on, but he said it was over. He told me that about a year before you disappeared. He said it was a mistake, that he ended it. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. I believed him. And after you were gone, it was like they did not even try to hide it anymore. He admitted, his voice low. I confronted him once. I told him to come clean, to respect your memory. But you never told anyone else, did you? I am sorry, Nadine. I should have, he mumbled, looking down at his hands. A waitress approached, and I pulled my baseball cap lower, ordering a whiskey. Neat. I was going to need it. After she left, Harlan leaned in closer. There is more, he said. His voice was barely audible over the jukebox music. About your house. Your money. My gut clenched. What about it? Vance. He used your life insurance payout to clear his gambling debts. And then there is the inheritance. The words hit me like a punch. Gambling debts? I never knew he had any. I thought we were doing fine with my salary. $2.5 million. That was the value of the policy and the estate. $2.5 million. And now, Harlan continued, his voice full of disgust, he and Blythe, they are using what is left to plan this ridiculous, over-the-top wedding. It is your money, Nadine. They are using your death to fund their new life together. The whiskey arrived. I downed it in one fiery gulp. The burn was a welcome distraction. Show me proof, I demanded. Harlan pulled out his phone. He showed me screenshots of bank statements he had managed to get, text messages he had been copied on, evidence of their betrayal laid bare in pixels and numbers. They were planning to start a real estate development company with the rest of my money. It was all there. The blatant, shameless theft of my life. And my mother? I asked, dreading the answer. Is she really okay with all of this? Harlan's expression said it all. Agatha, she has been helping them plan the whole thing. She says it is what you would have wanted, for them to be happy. The betrayal from my own mother felt like a physical blow. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I had to get out of there. I turned to leave, my mind reeling from the financial betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all. But then Harlan grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. Wait, he said, his face pale. Nadine, there is something else. Something you need to know. I paused, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. What? It is about the day you went hiking. My heart stopped. What about it? He swallowed hard. His eyes darted around the bar as if he was afraid of being overheard. Vance, he knew about that trail. He knew how dangerous it was after a heavy rain. We talked about it a few weeks before, after a buddy of ours slipped and broke his ankle up there. The air in my lungs turned to ice. My memory flashed back to that morning. Vance, so cheerful, so insistent. You should take the Carson Ridge Trail. The view is spectacular after the rain. He is the one who suggested you go there that morning, is he not? Harlan's voice was barely a whisper, but the accusation hung in the air like a death sentence. The implications hit me like a wave of ice water. This was not just an affair. This was not just theft. Had my accident been arranged? The thought was so monstrous, so unthinkable, that for a moment I could not breathe. Do you have proof of that, too? I asked. My voice was dangerously quiet. Harlan nodded slowly. His eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and grim certainty. He texted me that morning, asking if I thought the trail would be slick enough. I did not think anything of it at the time. I thought he was just concerned. But then later, Blythe texted him, and I think he accidentally copied me on the thread. My whole body went rigid. "Send them to me," I said, my voice like steel. I scribbled the number for my disposable phone on a napkin and pushed it across the table. "Send me everything you have. Every screenshot, every statement, everything." "Nadine, what are you going to do with it all?" he asked. His face was a mask of worry. I managed to smile, but I knew there was no warmth in it. "I am going to give them the wedding day they deserve." I walked out of the bar and into the drizzling rain. My mind was racing, trying to process the enormity of what I had just learned. If Vance had deliberately sent me to that trail, knowing how treacherous it was, this was attempted murder. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message. It was from Harlan. He had already sent the files. I ducked under the awning of a closed shop. My hands were shaking as I opened the first image. It was a screenshot of a text message thread. My blood ran cold as I read the words. "Vance, trail should be slick enough after the rain. Make sure she goes alone. Blythe, are you sure about this? Vance, it is the only way we can be together. Trust me." I had to lean against the cold brick wall for support. My knees felt weak. They had not just betrayed me. They had not just stolen from me. They had tried to kill me. All for money. All so they could be together without judgment. I closed the messages. A terrifying calm washed over my shock. The old Nadine, the trusting, naive wife and sister, had truly died on that mountain. The woman standing in the rain, staring at the proof of her own attempted murder, was someone entirely new. And she was about to learn that karma, when it finally arrives, has perfect, deadly aim. The next step was to bring my allies together. I arranged a meeting with Jolene at a quiet coffee shop 2 towns over, a place where no one would recognize me. When she saw me, she burst into tears, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "I cannot believe it is really you," she sobbed. "I thought I was going crazy when you called." "I am sorry for disappearing on you, Jolene," I said, guiding her to a corner booth. "But I needed time to gather evidence." I pulled out my phone and showed her the text messages from Harlan. Her hand flew to her mouth as she read them. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. "Nadine, they planned it. The whole thing." "It looks that way," I said, my voice grim. "But I need more." Before she could respond, a man in a dark suit approached our table. My heart jumped into my throat until I saw Jolene relax slightly. "Nadine," she said, her voice steady. "This is Detective Quinton. He has been investigating your case." I tensed up immediately. "Jolene, you did not." "It is okay," Detective Quinton said. His voice was calm and reassuring as he slid into the booth. "Your secret is safe. Frankly, Mrs. Hayes, I have been suspicious of your husband and sister from the start. The timeline of their engagement, the quick insurance payout, it never sat right with me. But I could not prove anything." He pulled out a small digital recorder. "And now I would like to hear your story." So I told them everything. The hike, the fall, Muriel, discovering the engagement. When I got to the part about my mother, Agatha, helping them, Jolene reached for my hand. "There is something else you should know," she said quietly. "About your mother." "That she is supporting them?" "I already know." "No, it is worse," Jolene said, glancing at the detective, who nodded. "She has been helping them sell off your things. Your jewelry, your art collection. Everything you inherited from Grandma Rose." The coffee cup in my hand cracked under the pressure of my grip. My own mother. Detective Quinton made some notes. "Legally, without a death certificate, those sales could be considered theft," he explained. "We have been looking into Vance's finances for a while. Insurance fraud at the very least. And now with this attempted murder." He then pulled some documents from his briefcase and laid them on the table. We also found something interesting when we dug a little deeper. Your grandmother's will. My head snapped up. What about it? The version filed with the court is not the original, he said gravely. We found the real one in your grandmother's safety deposit box. He slid both documents across the table. The difference was stark. The real one left her entire estate, a massive $2.5 million inheritance, to me. The filed version, the forgery, split everything between me and Blythe. How? I whispered, staring at my mother's signature on the fraudulent document. I wondered if she had hired a lawyer to do this, or just forged it herself. Your mother had power of attorney after your grandmother's stroke, Quentin explained. She made the switch before filing. So, my own mother had stolen my inheritance. And now she was helping my husband and sister sell off assets they technically did not own. It was a conspiracy, a web of lies and greed spun by the three people I should have been able to trust most in the world. I thought about custody battles I had heard of, people fighting over children, but this was my family fighting to erase my existence for cash. Just then, Jolene's phone buzzed. Her face went pale as she looked at it. You need to see this, she said, her voice trembling. It was a social media post from Blythe. A picture of her in a bridal shop, wearing a wedding dress. My grandmother's vintage wedding dress, I said, feeling sick. The one that was supposed to be mine. The caption read, "Final dress fitting. Cannot wait to honor my sister's memory by wearing her dream dress on my special day." And as if that was not enough, Jolene added one last devastating blow. I overheard her talking to your mother yesterday. She said she is planning to announce at the wedding that they are expecting. The room spun. What? She is 3 months pregnant. 3 months. The math was simple and brutal. They conceived their child while I was fighting for my life in a stranger's cabin. While they were planning their wedding with my money. I want to destroy them, I said. My voice was quiet, but shaking with rage. Not just legally. I want them to feel what I felt. Detective Quentin looked at me, a grim understanding in his eyes. We have enough for arrests now, he said. But if you want maximum impact. The wedding, I finished. Let them have their perfect day. Then take everything. It was a huge risk, but it was the only way to get the justice I truly wanted. The plan was set in motion. The trap was laid. I was going to walk back into my life, not as a victim, but as a reckoning. I was going to let them put on their beautiful clothes, stand in front of all their friends, and smile for the cameras. And right when they thought they had won, I would burn their entire world to the ground. That evening, I let myself into my childhood home using a key I knew was hidden under a loose brick by the back door. The house felt completely alien to me now. I walked through the mudroom, smelling the familiar scent of lavender potpourri and old wood, but it brought me no comfort. The walls, once covered with pictures of our family, had been rearranged. Photos of Vance and Blythe were everywhere. They were replacing the ones that used to have me in them. I saw a framed picture of the two of them at the beach, smiling brightly, sitting right where my college graduation photo used to be. I walked into the darkened kitchen, pulled out one of the heavy oak chairs, and sat at the table, waiting in the shadows. An hour later, the front door opened. I heard the familiar sound of my mother, Agatha, humming to herself. She walked into the kitchen and flipped on the light switch. The humming stopped abruptly. She clutched her chest, her leather purse dropping to the floor with a heavy thud. Jesus, she gasped, her eyes wide with absolute terror. Nadine. You cannot keep doing that. Sit down, mother, I said. My voice was entirely flat, devoid of any daughterly affection. We need to talk about Grandma Rose and her will. Her face went pale. All the color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking older than her 65 years. I do not know what you are talking about. I reached into my bag and slapped both versions of the will onto the kitchen table. The real one and the forgery. Do you want to explain this? She stared at the papers. Her composure was crumbling right before my eyes. "Where did you get those?" "It does not matter where I got them," I replied. "What matters is what happens next." I pushed the reel toward her. "You are going to help me, or I am taking this to the district attorney. I will hire a ruthless lawyer. You will go to prison for fraud." "You would not," she stammered, her hands shaking as she gripped the edge of the table. "I am your mother. And Blythe is your sister." I shot back, feeling a hot wave of anger rise in my chest. "That did not stop either of you from trying to kill me and steal my life. It did not stop you from stealing my inheritance to fund their sick fantasy." "I did not know about that," she cried, collapsing into a chair. Real, heavy sobs shook her shoulders. "I swear, Nadine. I only found out after they said you were dead. Vance was so broken up, and Blythe was there for him. They were in love. I thought it was fate. I just wanted my family to be happy." I laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound that echoed in the quiet kitchen. "Fate? They planned my death, Mother. And you helped them profit from it. You helped them plan their wedding, helped them sell my things, all while knowing what they did. Do not speak to me about fate or family." She kept crying, burying her face in her hands, but I felt absolutely nothing. No sympathy, no pity. Just a cold, hard resolve. "Here's what is going to happen," I continued, my voice like ice. "You are going to keep planning this wedding. You are going to make it perfect. Spare no expense. It is my money paying for it anyway, right?" "What are you going to do?" she whispered through her tears. "I am going to give my dear sister the wedding she deserves," I said. "The only question is which side you will be on when it all comes down." She stared at the 2 wills on the table. Her mind was clearly racing, weighing her options. Her survival instinct finally won out over any twisted sense of loyalty she had to Blythe. She looked up at me. Her face was streaked with tears, and her eyes were full of fear. "What do you need me to do?" "First," I said, "get me a copy of every financial document you have related to them and this wedding. Every vendor contract, every receipt. Then I want to know every single detail. The guest list, the seating chart, the schedule, every speech that is planned." "And if I do all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Then maybe, just maybe," I said, standing up to leave, "you will not spend your retirement in a prison cell." As I walked out the back door and into the cool night air, I heard her pick up the phone. Her voice, miraculously composed, floated through the open window. "Blythe, darling, it is Mom. I have had the most wonderful idea for your wedding entrance." The trap was officially set. All the pieces were falling into place. Over the next few days, I worked closely with Detective Quinton and his team. They flagged all of Vance's accounts. The plan was to let him attempt to move the money on the day of the wedding, proving his intent to launder the stolen funds. At the same time, I began my psychological warfare. The wedding rehearsal was in full swing when I slipped into the church. I climbed the narrow wooden stairs to the choir loft, Jolene right behind me. From our hidden vantage point, I watched the grotesque parody of my life unfold below. The church smelled of old paper and fresh lilies. The stained glass windows cast long, colorful shadows across the pews. "No, no, Blythe, darling," my mother called out. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space. She was playing her part perfectly, directing the wedding party with forced enthusiasm. "You need to pause longer at the 3rd pew. That is where the photographers will have the best angle." Blythe was wearing a loose sundress that was already straining to conceal her growing belly. She practiced her walk again. Vance stood at the altar, beaming at her. He looked at her with the exact same adoring expression he used to reserve for me. He looked like the perfect, loving partner. The sight of it made me sick to my stomach. "They seem nervous," Jolene whispered, handing me a pair of binoculars. "Especially Blythe." "Good," I said, focusing the lenses on them. Just then, my disposable phone buzzed. It was a text from Detective Quinton. FBI team in position. All accounts frozen. Ready when you are. Down below, Blythe was having what looked like a heated, whispered argument with my mother. I strained my ears to listen. The acoustics of the old church carried their voices up to the loft. I cannot do this, Mom. It does not feel right. Wearing Nadine's dress. What if she is watching us? Do not be ridiculous, my mother hissed, glancing around nervously. Everything is perfect. Stop ruining the moment. Vance joined them, putting a comforting arm around Blythe. Babe, we talked about this. It is what Nadine would have wanted. I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I sent a text to Harlan. You are up. Right on cue. Harlan burst through the main church doors, looking appropriately flustered. His footsteps echoed loudly on the marble floor. Vance. We have a problem. It is the permits for the new development. And the bank, they are threatening to pull our funding. Vance's face darkened immediately. He stepped away from Blythe. Not now, Harlan. We need to deal with this today, or the whole thing could fall apart, Harlan insisted, playing his part beautifully. They locked me out of the main portal. Fine, Vance grumbled. He kissed Blythe on the cheek. I will handle this. You finish up here. After Vance and Harlan left, Blythe sank into a pew, burying her head in her hands. My mother patted her shoulder awkwardly. I will go get you some water, she said, hurrying away toward the back rooms. It was the opening I had been waiting for. Stay here, I whispered to Jolene. I slipped down the back stairs and into the main sanctuary, staying deep in the shadows of the large stone pillars. Blythe was alone, muttering to herself. This is wrong. This is all wrong. Having second thoughts, sister dear? I said. My voice echoed slightly in the empty church. She whirled around, her eyes wide with sheer terror. Who is there? Just your conscience, I said, staying hidden behind a massive stone column. Telling you what you already know. That karma is coming. Nadine? Her voice cracked into a pathetic whimper. That is impossible. Is it? I asked, taking a slow step forward so my silhouette was visible. Like it was impossible for you to sleep with my husband? To help plan my fatal accident? No, you are dead. This is not real. I stepped out from behind the pillar, letting a shaft of colored light from the stained glass windows fall across my face. Her face went completely ashen. She stumbled backward, making a sign of the cross over her chest. You are not real. You are not real. Oh, I am very real, I said, taking a slow, deliberate step toward her. And so is all the evidence of what you and Vance did. Every text message. Every secret meeting. Every single penny you stole. Please, she whispered. Her hands flew to her stomach protectively. I am sorry. We can fix this. Fix this? I laughed, a cold, empty sound. Like you fixed my route before suggesting that hiking trail? Her eyes widened in absolute shock. That was Vance's idea, she sobbed. I tried to stop him. Those texts say otherwise, I said, moving closer until I was standing right in front of her. But do not worry. I am not here to hurt you. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I am here to promise you something. What? She whimpered, tears streaming down her face. The perfect wedding day you deserve, I smiled, and she shrank back in terror. Sleep well, sister. I will see you at the altar. I melted back into the shadows just as my mother returned with a glass of water. Blythe was hyperventilating, pointing frantically at the empty space where I had just stood. Mom, I saw her. Nadine is alive. She was here. Do not be ridiculous, my mother said, though I could see her hands were shaking violently as she handed over the water. You are just nervous. It is the pregnancy hormones. From the balcony, I watched my mother lead my hysterical, sobbing sister away. My phone buzzed again. It was Quentin. Vance took the bait. He is trying to move money between accounts right now to bypass the freeze. Perfect, I texted back. Let him dig his grave just a little bit deeper. The night before the wedding, I sat in Jolene's guest room. The air was thick with anticipation. The room smelled of fresh linen and the lavender tea Jolene had brewed. On the bed lay my grandmother's jewelry box, one of the few things my mother had somehow forgotten to sell off. Jolene came in holding 2 glasses of red wine. Everything is ready, she said. Her voice was a mixture of excitement and deep nerves. Quentin has teams at every exit of the church. Harlan planted the doctored financial documents in Vance's office for the FBI to find. Even your mother came through with the final seating chart changes. She hesitated, swirling the dark red wine in her glass. Are you sure about this, Nadine? It is going to destroy them completely. There is no coming back from a public arrest. I opened the old wooden jewelry box and pulled out my grandmother's sapphire ring. It was the one I was supposed to wear on my own wedding day, but Vance had insisted on buying a cheap modern ring instead. They tried to kill me, Jolene, I said. My voice was low and perfectly steady. They stole my life, my money, my future. Tomorrow, they are going to know exactly how that feels. Just then, my phone rang. The screen displayed Blythe's name. We both stared at it. Answer it, Jolene urged. Find out what she wants. I pressed the green button and put the phone on speaker. Hello, sister. Nadine, she slurred. Her voice was thick with alcohol and heavy tears. I knew it was you in the church. I am not crazy. Having some pre-wedding jitters? I asked coldly. Please, she started crying. It was a desperate, pathetic sound. Do not do this. Whatever you are planning for tomorrow, just do not. And why should I not? Because I am pregnant, she sobbed. Please, Nadine. Think about your niece. Or your nephew. We are family. I gripped the phone tighter. My knuckles turned white. I could feel the anger boiling over. You mean the baby you conceived with my husband while I was supposedly dead? The baby you planned to raise on my stolen inheritance? Do not use that child as a shield for your own wickedness. I love him, Nadine. We never meant to hurt you. Really? Those text messages about the hiking trail suggest otherwise, I snapped. There was a long moment of silence. Then she whispered, he said it would look like an accident. That we could be together without anyone judging us. If we asked for a divorce, you would take half of everything. We wanted to start fresh. I was weak. I was stupid. But I have been paying for it every day. I see you everywhere, Nadine. In my dreams, in mirrors. I cannot escape what we did. Good, I said, twisting my grandmother's ring on my finger. Then tomorrow should feel very familiar. I hung up the phone right as she started pleading again. She sounds completely terrified, Jolene said, watching me carefully. She should be, I replied. I walked over to a large garment bag hanging on the back of the bedroom door. I unzipped it, revealing my grandmother's original, unaltered wedding dress. The real one, Jolene gasped. How did you get that? Muriel's granddaughter works at the dry cleaners in town, I explained, running my hand over the intricate vintage lace. She switched them yesterday afternoon. Blythe will find out tomorrow morning that her altered version is gone. And this one will definitely not fit. My phone buzzed. A text from Quentin. Vance just tried to empty all offshore accounts. Everything is completely frozen. He is panicking. Another text, this time from Harlan. He is drinking heavily at Jimmy's. Talking about running. Should we stop him? Jolene asked, looking at the screen. No, I said with a grim smile. Let him show up hungover. It will make everything so much better. A sudden knock at the front door made us both jump. Jolene went to answer it and came back a moment later with my mother. Agatha looked completely haunted. She entered the room without waiting for an invitation. Blythe is hysterical, my mother said. She is threatening to call off the wedding entirely. And that would be bad, I said coldly. Because if she does, we lose our chance. The FBI needs them to attempt to access those frozen accounts one last time tomorrow to prove intent. I need them at the altar. I looked my mother dead in the eye. Do not worry. She will show up. Her pride will not let her do anything else. She stared at me, her face a mess of conflicting emotions. Nadine, please, she begged. Show some mercy. Mercy? I opened my phone and played the audio recording of Vance and Blythe planning my accident, the one Harlan had managed to extract from an old voicemail backup. Did they show me mercy? She listened to their voices. Her face grew paler with each spoken word. When it finished, she sank heavily onto the edge of the bed. I did not know, she whispered. I never thought they were capable of that. Now you do, I said. And tomorrow, so will everyone else. Be at the church at 10 in the morning. Wear something festive. After all, it is your daughter's wedding day. After she left, I turned off my phone. The stage was set. I needed to be well rested for my sister's big day. The next morning, the church bells struck noon. Chaos was erupting in the bridal suite. I stood in the hallway, watching through a tiny crack in the heavy wooden door that I had intentionally propped open. My heart beat in a steady, rhythmic drum. This is not my dress. Blythe's scream echoed down the marble halls. She was holding up the original, unaltered wedding dress, exactly as I had planned. But that is impossible, my mother said, faking confusion perfectly. We had it altered last week. I cannot wear this. It will not even go over my hips. I am pregnant, for God's sake, she shrieked, throwing the expensive lace onto the floor. Several guests who were passing by stopped in their tracks and stared, their eyes wide. Her pregnancy was not supposed to be public knowledge yet. It was the first crack in their perfect, pristine facade. The wedding coordinator rushed past me, looking frantic, her clipboard pressed against her chest. 15 minutes until the ceremony, she hissed into her headset. I smiled to myself, slipped away from the door, and made my way down the side aisle. I took my position behind the massive church organ, perfectly concealed by deep shadows and heavy velvet curtains. The guests began to file in. It was a sea of pastel dresses and dark, tailored suits. They were all murmuring about the commotion they had heard from the bridal suite. I peeked through a gap in the curtains. I saw Vance standing at the altar. He was swaying slightly. He looked incredibly pale and sweaty, clearly suffering from a massive hangover and the crippling realization that his money was gone. Harlan stood beside him, playing the role of the supportive best man while tightly gripping Vance's arm to keep him steady. The grand organ music started to play. The great wooden doors at the back of the church opened heavily. Despite everything, the guests stood and turned, a conditioned response to the music. Blythe began her walk down the aisle. She was wearing a hastily found backup dress, a simple, plain white sheath that did absolutely nothing to hide her pregnant condition. She was not a radiant, glowing bride. She looked utterly terrified. Her eyes darted around the dark corners of the church as if she expected to see a ghost leaping out at her. She reached the altar. The priest smiled warmly and began his speech. His voice droned on about love, honor, and holy matrimony. I caught my mother's eye from my hiding spot. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod. She had done her part. Now it was my turn. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, the priest intoned, his voice echoing in the sudden silence of the sanctuary, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence stretched on for a heartbeat. 2. 3. Then, I stepped out from behind the heavy oak organ. My black heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. The sound was sharp, loud, and impossible to ignore in the dead-silent church. Every single head turned towards me. A collective, massive gasp rippled through the crowd. Vance stumbled backward, knocking over a tall candle stand. His jaw dropped, and his face went completely slack with disbelief. Blythe dropped her bouquet. The expensive white roses scattered across the polished floor. I walked slowly down the center aisle, keeping my head held high, a faint, terrifying smile playing on my lips. I have a few reasons. If you have made it this far, please do me a favor, like the video and comment number 1 down below. It lets me know how awesome you are and shows that you are right here with me on this journey. Your support is a massive encouragement and truly motivates me. Drop that one so I can recognize you, and now, let us get back to my story. The church erupted into an absolute cacophony of panicked whispers and loud gasps. I continued my slow, deliberate walk down the aisle, savoring the pure, unadulterated shock on every single face in that room. I saw my old neighbors, my former colleagues, people who had attended my funeral, now staring at me like I was a walking corpse. "Sorry I am late," I said. My voice was clear, steady, and carried easily over the stunned crowd. Traffic was murder. This is not possible," Vance slurred, pointing a violently shaking finger at me. "You are dead. We made sure." He caught himself immediately, clapping his hand over his mouth, but it was too late. His words, his accidental confession, hung heavily in the air, damning him completely in front of 200 witnesses. "You made sure?" I asked, raising a single eyebrow as I reached the front of the church. "Like you made sure the hiking trail was slick after the rain? Like you made sure I went alone?" "Nadine, please," Blythe whispered. She sank to her knees right there on the altar. Her face was a mess of tears and black, runny mascara. "Not here. Please, not here." "Why not here, Blythe?" I asked, my voice rising so the people in the back rows could hear every word. "It is my church, too. That was my grandmother's dress you tried to wear. It is my money that is paying for all of these beautiful flowers. And," I said, turning to lock eyes with the sweating, trembling man beside her, "that is my husband you are trying to marry." As if on cue, the heavy main doors of the church swung open again. Detective Quinton entered, his badge held high, followed by a dozen uniformed officers and several FBI agents in sharp dark suits. "Speaking of money," I continued, turning back to Vance, my voice ringing with absolute authority. "Vance, would you like to explain to everyone how you have been spending my life insurance payout? Or how you paid off your massive gambling debts? Or should we just ask the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit?" Pure, animalistic panic flashed in Vance's eyes. He bolted. He turned and made a desperate run for the small side door near the sacristy. But the federal agents were much faster. They tackled him hard before he made it halfway down the steps. I watched as they pinned him to the floor, cuffing his wrists forcefully behind his back as he struggled and cursed loudly. "And Blythe," I said, turning my attention to my sister, who was now just a crumpled, sobbing heap on the marble floor. "Should we tell everyone about the text messages? About how you helped plan my accident so you two could be together?" "I did not. I never meant to," she sobbed, clutching her stomach. "Show them," I called out to Jolene, who was waiting up in the choir loft. The large video screen that had been set up to display their romantic wedding photos flickered to life. But instead of smiling pictures of the happy couple on the beach, their own text messages appeared in giant, damning black letters for everyone to see. "Vance, trail should be slick enough. Make sure she goes alone. Blythe, are you sure about this? Vance, it is the only way we can be together. Trust me." The crowd read the screen. The whispers instantly turned into loud shouts of outrage and disgust. People were standing up, pointing, yelling. My mother, seeing her carefully constructed world collapsing entirely, stood up from the front pew. Nadine, that is enough. Please, stop this. Enough? I turned to her, my eyes blazing. Like how you forged Grandma Rose's will to steal my inheritance was enough? Do not worry, Mother. The authorities have some serious questions for you, too. Two officers moved purposefully towards her. Agatha looked at them, looked at me, and fainted dead away into the wooden pew. Blythe, overcome by panic and the reality of the situation, vomited into a large decorative fern next to the altar. The whole scene was an incredibly beautiful, chaotic disaster. You see, I addressed the stunned guests, my voice filled with the righteous fury I had held back for 6 long months. This was supposed to be my happy ending. My husband, my house, my family. I worked hard for my promotion, my salary. But they tried to kill me for it instead. They chose money and lust over my life. The agents were now dragging a handcuffed, struggling Vance back down the main aisle. Nadine, we can explain, he shouted desperately over the noise of the crowd. Please, just let me talk to you. Oh, you will have plenty of time to explain, I said calmly, watching him squirm. To the FBI. To the district attorney. And to a jury of your peers. I walked over to the wooden collection plate resting on a small table by the main doors where the agents were momentarily holding him. I pulled my grandmother's sapphire ring from my pocket. Remember how you always told me I was too trusting, Vance? Too naive? I looked him straight in the eye, enjoying the absolute despair swimming in his gaze. It turns out I learned from the absolute best about betrayal. I dropped the heavy sapphire ring into the brass collection plate. It landed with a loud, satisfying clink. Consider it a donation, I said to the priest, who was standing nearby, completely dumbfounded and pale. God knows you both need the prayers. As they were led away, a crying, handcuffed Blythe and a swearing, defeated Vance, Jolene appeared at my side. She handed me my coat. Was it worth it? She asked softly, looking around at the ruined flowers and the whispering crowd. I watched through the open doors as the police cars pulled up, their red and blue lights flashing against the stone walls of the church. I heard the sirens beginning to wail. I saw the local news reporters, who had received an anonymous tip from me that morning, rushing onto the lawn, their cameras flashing wildly. I looked back at the grand wedding cake, which had been knocked over in the commotion, a perfect, smashed metaphor for their special day. They tried to steal my entire life, I said, straightening my jacket and taking a deep breath of the cool air. I would say this was exactly what they deserved. Several months later, the courthouse steps were incredibly crowded with reporters and news vans. The trial had been a local sensation. Vance and Blythe were being led out in heavy handcuffs and orange jumpsuits after their final sentencing. I stood across the street, leaning against a brick wall, sipping a hot coffee with Jolene and Detective Quentin. The morning air was sharp and cold. 15 years each, Quentin said, taking a sip of his own coffee. Plus full restitution of all stolen assets. The district attorney said it was one of the easiest convictions she has ever gotten. Especially after Vance tried to throw Blythe under the bus and blame the entire murder plot on her during his testimony. I watched my sister stumble awkwardly on the stone steps. Her baby bump was very visible now, though the prison uniforms were certainly not flattering. She was scheduled to be transferred to a high-security facility with a maternity ward by the end of the week. The thought of that baby, my own niece or nephew, being born inside a prison was a complicated, heavy thought. I took a deep breath and decided I could not carry that burden. It was their choice, their consequence. What about my mother? I asked, looking away from Blythe. House arrest and 5 years of supervised probation, given her age and her suddenly failing health, Quentin checked his notes. She had to sell her house, the one you grew up in, to pay back the estate she defrauded. Your full inheritance has been restored legally. He handed me a thick manila envelope. The FBI finished processing all the seized accounts. That is everything they stole, plus interest and severe civil penalties. I did not even open the envelope. The number inside made me a very wealthy woman, but the money felt entirely secondary to the peace I was finally feeling. Just then, Harlan jogged up to our spot on the sidewalk. He had testified against Vance in exchange for immunity regarding his knowledge of the financial fraud, and he was now trying to rebuild his own ruined reputation. "You need to see this, Nadine," he said, handing me his smartphone. A local news channel was playing. My mother, looking incredibly frail, old, and stripped of all her usual glamorous makeup, was giving a televised interview from her small, rented apartment. "I failed both of my daughters," she said, her voice weak and trembling for the cameras. "I chose the wrong side. I believed the wrong stories because it was easier. If Nadine never forgives me, I will completely understand. I just want her to know I am sorry." "Turn it off," I said, handing the phone back to Harlan without watching the rest. I had heard enough apologies to last a lifetime. They were just words. "Have you heard from Blythe directly?" Jolene asked gently, bumping her shoulder against mine. "Just letters from the county jail," I replied, staring at the empty courthouse steps. "Saying she is sorry over and over again. She asked to see me before she is transferred. She brought up custody arrangements for the baby, asking if I would take the child." And no," I said firmly. "I will not raise the child of the people who tried to murder me. She lost the right to call me sister when she helped plan my death. Some things simply do not deserve forgiveness. Social services will handle it." I threw my empty coffee cup into a nearby trash can. I felt a sudden, overwhelming restlessness in my legs. The burning, toxic anger that had fueled my every waking moment for the past 8 months had finally cooled down. It left a strange kind of quiet emptiness in its place. "I am tired," I admitted out loud. "I am so tired of being angry." "Then stop," Jolene said, reaching out and squeezing my hand tightly. "You got your life back, Nadine. You got your money, your freedom, your safety. Do not let them take up any more space in your head. They are locked away." My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text message from Muriel, the kind woman in the woods who had saved my life. "The cabin is always open if you need some peace and quiet, honey. Beef stew is on the stove." Peace. What a beautiful, foreign concept. Suddenly, looking at that message, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I did not need to go back to my old brokerage. I did not need to live in this town filled with ghosts and bad memories. "I bought a ticket," I said. A real, genuine smile formed on my face for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "To where?" Jolene asked, looking surprised. "New Zealand," I said. That long hiking trip I always wanted to take before Vance talked me out of it. It felt perfectly fitting. I was going to start over in a place known for its beautiful, treacherous, and challenging mountain trails. I was going to reclaim the very activity they had tried to use to destroy me. I was not going to let them take my love for the mountains. "Are you running away?" Harlan asked, stuffing his hands into his pockets. "No," I said, feeling a massive, invisible weight finally lift from my shoulders. "I am moving forward." Vance and Blythe would sit in their tiny concrete cells for the next decade and a half. My mother would live out her remaining days confined to a small apartment under house arrest, stripped of her pride and her wealth. The money was back where it belonged. It was time to write my own story now. A story with a new beginning, one without revenge filling up every single chapter. I looked down at my right hand. I did not have my grandmother's sapphire ring anymore, and I did not miss it. It was never truly about the money, or the ring, or the house. It was about the absolute truth. And now, the truth was out in the open for everyone to see. As I walked away from the courthouse, leaving Harlan, Detective Quinton, and the heavy ghosts of my past behind, I felt a sense of profound, brilliant freedom. Ahead of me lay massive mountains to climb, endless trails to explore, and a life completely reclaimed. It is a life I will live entirely on my own terms. This time, absolutely no one will write my ending but me.